Hello folks, brews.com here, and me are Nepilza. So this time I got you 7 sample deck lists for the new Kaladesh Standard. By the way, like the site of the website is under construction, it will be revived soon. In the meantime, follow the channel, subscribe to it, and follow me on the social media. Anyhow, so the biggest deck, which is probably on everybody's mind at this point, is the vehicle stack. We know probably that it's gonna contain a bunch of red cards because that color is kind of pushed towards that artifacts construct vehicle aggression. But the real question is, what is the second or even the third color? And depending on how the metagame will shape up, at least like for the Pro Tour, so we would know the answer to that question. So basically, if we would see that mid-range or control-ish decks would be on top of the field, then this version of Thing has a bit better shot to find like just a wider range of different style of decks. But if the metagame will be much faster, then probably we would need the just basic red splash white version, which will be more aggressive, faster, and just much more consistent, and so forth. But I thought that if um, the challenge will be to just keep up with the card advantage of slower decks, then splashing blue is definitely necessary, and in order to fight maybe some reincarnation of black green delirium, so all the Emrakul decks, including Timur, emerge, then you'd probably need to splash black. So the meta base is actually okay. I think with the new tools and mainlands and such, you can actually craft a 3-color deck mana base pretty easily. So you have a bunch of different lands you can play. Then as for the actual artifacts, I think the baseline will be almost the same as I portray here. And I think Dragster actually is worth putting into this deck because you can animate it with some 2-drops like this one, and then with Apprentice or anything. So Crew 1 is actually pretty significant because mostly the stuff actually wants free. That's Flagship. It's a free off just because it's a legendary. You probably don't want 4th of the Caravan, but I think you want it, especially if your deck is splashing 2 colors. Bars is just a nice country body, and it's just pretty big and doesn't die to a lot of free damage removal and stuff like that. Copter is nice because it lets you also to loot, so to keep the action going. Then the Cruiser is very easy for because you don't have to crew it up the first turn, and it just can deal that 5 missing damage. And then let's say you just draw somebody to crew it up with the next turn, and not the turn you play it, so really efficient. Red Hulk seems to be kind of freebie for this deck because you ever draw a bunch of cards and have a massive first strike body, or you just deal a bunch of damage to face. I'm not sure how many cups you want to play, and also you need to watch out for your curve. So you want to have a good chance of dealing a lot of damage with the Hulk if they choose to do that. So you probably want to have a good amount of 4-drops and some 5-drops as well in your deck. And then Apprentice is just a nice 1-drop. I think it's a freebie for that kind of deck. Let's see, crew up freely, even though it's just 2 power, but sometimes that's enough for some of the vehicles. And then it's a 2-free body to attack with if you really want to. Then let's go for the actual reasons to splash black and blue here. Blue is for Crane mainly because it's a body to animate some of the vehicles, and also just gets you more of those vehicles because it searches for artifacts. It's nice that it looks top 4, not top 3. And then a very big reason I think to splash black is have this new kind of black gas, because uh, it's a free power, so it accrues up pretty much everything, and then it's a turn to drop. You can also attack with it, and then it just keeps coming back because you're full of creatures, and yeah, it goes back onto the battlefield, not to your hand. So yeah, but actually, the red white version also has a lot of good free power bodies to crew up vehicles with. But if you decide to splash some other colors, not white, to the red vehicle stack, then you have to probably play this card. Then black gives you in the main deck the removal. You have more in the sideboard. Unsubstantiate, well, it's a necessary evil. I don't like the rebuff in this deck, and we don't have Clash of Wills anymore. Plus, this thing has hidden synergy. You have a lot of comes into play triggers, so you can draw more with the barge if you really want to. You can save your own flagship from some destruction. You can also replay the Hulk, have that extra trigger, have extra trigger from the Crane. So there are like a few hidden gems, some nice synergies. Then as for sideboard, you probably want some negates, that's for sure. You probably want more spot removal, that's for sure. Then you don't mind having some answers to Emrakul decks and all the Eldrazi's. With the Dismissal, then Transgress also does multiple jobs, including fighting the Eldrazi's. Then you probably want Flames because you have access to red and you also are a free color deck. Then Lost Legacy is another answer to those decks. To the Emrakul mid-range decks. And then Chandra has to be somewhere in the 75 in those decks, I feel like, but I don't feel like it belongs to main deck. You want it in the sideboard because there, you have so many good 4-drops, and then you actually want to have good consistency in terms of just maintaining pressure, maintaining aggression. And this is more of a mid-range control card, and this deck is more of a beatdown actually. But in the sideboard it's okay. And then the Zendikar Chandra is actually nice because it helps you to get against control and also against aggro. Just multiple ways you can use her. I'm not sure about the numbers. And then there is a chance you might want just one Dismissal, one Lost Legacy, and have 2 more slots in the sideboard for something, maybe for some cheap 1 or 2 mana spot removals against aggressive decks. That's probably what it should be. Anyways, moving on, we have 6 more decks to discuss. So this is something I'm very proud of, and I think this is very simple and very cheap, and it might actually show up at the Pro Tour, and I really hope so. So Red-Green Beatdown. Very simple mana base. I'm not sure about the numbers of forests and mountains, though. You have to double check that yourself, I feel like. So you have 8 1-drops, Messenger and Gorger. You might play different ones, especially that artifact Cure Ape maybe, if you have a slightly different build. I was thinking about it, but then I realized that I don't really want to play that many artifacts, I just want to bash face. So one of the main reasons to play this deck is this guy. So you have for 2 turns basically a 4-free trample guy for 2 turns at least. Then Cub actually can help this Brawler as well. I feel like it's a very decent 2-drop. Gives you energy counters Brawler, and not just for that. For the sideboard removals, like that's deal 3 or deal more, depending on how many counters you got. Plus, it's essentially like, if it's just gonna be something like a 2 mana free on average in a game, you're probably gonna be happy about that. Then the healing is something pretty nice, and Cup also supports healing, so Cup is there for multiple reasons, and healing is just too good of a card to pass on for such a deck. Then as for spells, so Flow, it's your Volcanic Hammer, 3 damage to somewhere, and it's important that it deals damage to face, so that's why it's main deck, and it's not just creature removal. Defiance also for the same reason, so you can mulligan your hand, which is pretty nice if you get flooded or your trying to search for that missing flow or some hasty dude to finish them off. Also, it hits face, it hits the creature, so yeah. Basically, you're a kind of small mana sink, or like you're mulligan your hand kind of card. Larger than life, okay, it's not an instant, but like it gives trample and plus R4 for 2 mana is decent. So trample is what's really kind of makes this card playable and constructed, in my opinion. And then of course you have this brutal force or Giant Grove that also gives trample to an artifact creature. Well, we don't have many of them, and well, the only artifact creature we play actually um, has trample already, but in some other versions this might be a very big card. So in here is just like a Giant Grove. Bear in mind it's only like target attacking creature, but this deck is just for patching face as quickly as possible, so it's a minor downside. But yeah, you want as many of those kind of cards as possible, so it's said that you can't really abuse it, but you don't really have Titan Strength, I believe, anymore. In the format it's rotated, so you don't have that many options, and you just want maximum amount of damage for as little cost. So Cruiser is in here not just to crew it up, but because it's just something that hits face the very same turn it comes in, and it doesn't die, so you can still like crew it on later, but it's not the focus of it. So, and then sideboard. So passive is for like mirrors and stuff like that. Prodder for slower decks, just some kind of like card advantage. Then you have this for all the creature decks, so additional spot removal if you really need to have some. Some planeswalkers again against slower decks. Hijack against vehicles decks. So yeah, like you can try a lot of different cards for this sideboard, but I think these cards actually describe what you want to do with your sideboard pretty well in terms of functionality. Okay, next deck. So this is probably the clunkiest one I brewed, and nevertheless, do not consider my deck list as like the final truth, so they're not like super tuned or tested. It's just something to guide you in your thinking process, what you can do and what you think like can be still built and be playable in this new standard season. So this is green-white tokens. So yeah, the deck lost a lot of good cards, but it also gained a few. But the problem is that they're all 5 drops. You still play Sylvan Advocate in the deck because it's a decent 2 drop, but you don't have manlands, so that's a problem. So there is a chance that you may want to splash this deck for some manlands and for more options for the sideboard and main deck, etc., and just make the deck more interactive. Because as it stands, it's kind of strange. I'm not sure how I feel about this build and about the archetype, but I think it's still alive. You still have Archangel, but you also get a bunch of other 5 drops, and that's a bit of a problem, I think. So I'm really not certain about the numbers here, but you probably want to play some copies of all of those cards in your 75. So Angel of Invention gives you dudes and also pumps your guys, so pretty awesome for green-white tokens deck, right? Then you have Gear Hulk, which is also pretty awesome because you can kind of distribute those counters and have interesting board states so that each of your creatures are actually relevant, things like that. Then you have Gear Hulk, which is basically Tragic Arrogance on a stick. Then you have Ovea Pashiri, so you have a good 1-drop that generates tokens over time and can actually generate gigantic tokens in the late game. Right, but that's a lot of 5-drops, right? And considering the fact that if not main deck then sideboard you want to play the 5-mana NACs, well, so what's the solution? You probably don't want to just play a random mana dork. There are quite a few of them. I'm not sure which one is better. You get the 1-2 Defender mana dork that can be flipped into a 4-6, as I remember, from Eldritch Moon. But maybe Cultivator is just better because you can attack with it, and like when your mana is tied up, and then it's not unrealistic to hit Delirium with this deck, so that you have a Death Touch buddy. But anyhow, you need some mana dork, and just pick one which you think suits your deck, your build better. Right. Then because of all the counter synergies, even though you've lost the Hanger back, but you have this Gear Hulk, etc. And then Angel might come in with the counters on it instead of tokens. So I recommend to try out this card. So it can be pretty bananas. Let's say like you go into a Via, into a 2-drop, into 3 mana Nisa. So you make a plant. Then turn 4 you activate Nisa for the minus ability, spread counters. So you would have basically 3 creatures with counters. And then, so on turn 4 and 4 mana, you play this Judge, and you basically draw 3 cards, which is quite decent value. But just don't try many copies of it. And then, especially with the Gear Hulk, you can make sure that you get a lot of value out of the Judge and draw extra cards in. The deck is already like pretty solid in terms of like value and kind of card advantage, but still, like I love this card in there. And to actually support it more, you can play as one of the handicraft. You would just use it as a great mana sink. It's a cheap card, and it's probably pretty insane late game trump as well. So pay extra, spread the counters, and then at some points probably cash it in for just a final attack. Of course, you have Declaration and Oath of Nisa, that's like auto includes, and Gideon's, of course. And then for sideboard, well, your old buddies like Lindvala, Tireless Tracker, Pacifist, and then also all the body sex removals like Declaration, Status Snare, Current and Fill. Then to stop aggro and to get some room, especially against the vehicles decks, you get the authority, so it's switches off their hasty dudes and gains you a bunch of life. Well, hopefully, but just enough to have some breathing room to catch up. And probably you want more Planeswalkers in Cyber just for slower decks, so you might as well play the new Nissa, the 5 mana one. You might also actually play here off of Gideon, that gives you tokens, and that also makes it possible for this new Nissa to ultimate the same turn she comes in, which might be pretty bonkers, but then I think you gotta change the deck quite a bit, and I'm not sure. So, because 3 would be an awkward spot, and you would have a bunch of 4s and 5s, so I'm not sure like how many 3-drops you would actually want, but you might, depending on your preferences. Maybe play less of Archangels, and then you wouldn't have such clogged up 5-drop slots, something like that, and then fit an Oath and new Nissas, perhaps. So practice will show you what you should do. Now, this is a funky deck, and this is something I would be tuning over time and test out. So this is Abzan Aristocrats, so with the Displacer, Cutthroat, and Monitor combo. So we don't have a good sacrifice outlets in Kaladesh, so that's a pity. But the combo works without that, and it's kind of a shame that you can't really sacrifice your dudes that efficiently, but well, that's about it. By the way, like the creature set will probably change quite a bit in this deck, because tutors and cantrips in this deck will probably change over time, and I'll probably have a mix of them all and so on, but you'll probably have some numbers of each of those creatures, because Lone Dryad is basically a mana board for this deck. And then Elvish Visionary was a pretty big loss, I think. But if you play up Zan, then you probably want to play some number of manlands, and that makes Advocate pretty okay replacement as a 2-drop for this deck. Yeah, you still have Duskwatch, you still have Sifter, etc. there is no evolutionary leap, so yeah, Cutthroat here is mainly for the combo like Sweeper's protection, so it will be pretty hard to actually get there efficiently. And I don't know if I want to play that other one drop that nets you a sign when it dies without a sacrifice outlet is kind of a stretch. But I don't know, maybe I'll play one just to have more early drops. It depends, but I think I'm gonna probably not play everything as 4 off because here's the problem. Yeah, you will play the Cryptolife right, sure. But then, with Company Gun, what do you do? So, without it, you don't have to be concerned so much about the drops, so the curve and so on. So there is that. Uh, but then, again, Company was so huge for this deck, so I don't know like what to play. So Diabolic Theory seems kinda horrible, but maybe a Necessary Evil. Then Challenge might not be that bad because you don't care about giving your opponent any of those creatures, so that's fine. And then it takes for top 10. So let's say you hit like 2 copies of the Monitor and they don't have a response, then you just win, something like that. And this thing doesn't really care so much about like what cost of the creature is that, but then it's not really reliable, consistent, etc. For Sideboard, well, Decoration Transgress probably ought to include something like Social Spirit for sure, something to get more card potential like Bishop or Tracker for sure. Unmaken is great because it's an instant removal for planeswalkers and vehicles and stuff. Then because you don't have Evolutionary Reap anymore, something like Ulvenwell Mysteries will be pretty handy, I feel like. Painful Truth is okay, maybe it's one-off, but not necessary, but you probably want something like that. Something like Collective Brutality is pretty good because just a very flexible card for your sideboard. But then again, there are plenty of things you can do, especially play, you know, some more instant speed removal because of vehicles, depending on how prevalent that would be. And then you can totally restructure your deck, fit in some value 3 drops, 5 drops, and more 1 drops, so that you can play Eldritch Evolution, and then search up the combo in a much more effective way, and then also play Travis from Moving Vault. You already have a Volume Vials. If you play the new, like the Fox, the 3 mana 2/2, then Evolution becomes better. Also, it's an artifact for the Traverse to switch on Delirium, things like that. Then you can play the Angel of Invention as a value 5 drop, and also one of the 5/4 that gains 5 when it enters, and you might even slice in like a copy or 2 of that 4 mana artifact that doubles those triggers. So you'll double a Monitor trigger, Catacomb Sister trigger, Angel, and then that 5 for Beast, etc. So you can go that way. Also doubles the trigger from the Familiar to gain some extra life, but you won't draw 2 cards, sadly. Anyhow, that's a lot of value, I think, overall. Okay, 3 more decks left. So, Spirit. So the creature base is probably gonna be like that, maybe minus a couple of Deep Fiends and a couple Archangels, so that's up to you. Though, it depends. I think Deep Fiend is probably better if you have to choose between 2. You probably want to split, so yeah, depends. But all the other creatures, it's a very basic setup. And then for spells, well, this is pretty self-explanatory, I think. You'll have to play up Unsubstantiate. You don't have Ojite's Command. You don't have Clash of Wills, so this is what you will have to do. And I think it's fine. It's a tempo deck, so you don't plan to go very long with this deck. For sideboard, you can do a lot of things. You can maybe play Dovin Bond, Gideon, things like that. I think Tally is pretty much auto include. Extra Declaration or some other removal is an auto include. A bunch of counters, including Dismissal for Miracle decks. Alliance, just to, you know, serving multiple purpose against aggro decks, gaining life, and tapping your dude so that you can block and trade and removing some big attacker like a big vehicle or something like that. Then, as per control, I think black-white, you can go black-white, but you can't really go blue-black anymore because the language. Going straight blue-white is also dangerous but possible. So I feel like Spirit Control is still alive. The mixture of planeswalkers depends on you, depends on your preference. I think the configuration will be very close, though 10 planeswalkers might seem kinda a lot. So you would have some drafts. Unfortunately, no language, so that weakens the deck a little bit, but it might be still strong. So I think you will have to play rebuff main because you lose Clash of Wills. Yeah, I think it's gonna be the norm, the usual thing. You can play Fortune's Favor, you can play off of Chase, so that depends on you. You can play off of Gideon or off of Liliana. I think it's possible that any of them actually fit this deck. So yeah, and then I'm just inserting a couple of copies here. You probably want to play at least one blue Hulk and then probably some copies of the white Hulk as well. And I think Cloud Blazer fits this deck quite a bit. Just a champ blocker that draws you cards and gains some life, so why not? Sideboard's probably pretty easy somewhat. New toys this like one of inside this wheel. I just feel like if it's gonna be playable anywhere, it's probably gonna be played on this deck. Then you can play the new extract card or pick to brain is probably the safest one. But yeah, you have to watch out for delirium on your side, so that's some extra effort. Bunch of different removals. Then Kaladesh Standard, your own Emrakul, just cause why not. Demon is probably gonna be a good one-off in the sideboard, probably not the main deck card. It's a bit narrow. And then Authority, cause why not, but probably just as a one-off. Which you probably would want to play it in the separate of that deck. Okay, now the last decks. This is a kind of derivative of the Blue-White Spirit, so this is blue-white value or enter the battlefield kind of shenanigans. So you cannot start without a Spell Queller and Reflector Mage, that's for sure. By the way, one card that I definitely missed in here in this list is the Deep Fiend. So it should be here just because it's extra value with the familiar and tokens and so on. Cloudberry, you have to play it. Crowley Reunited because you have a bunch of 4 and 5 drops and stuff like that you want to play fast. Yeah, Spirit to protect all of this thing. Probably might want to play more than 24 lands because your curve is much higher than in Spear's build. Angel of Invention kinda ought to include. Maybe the White Hulk belongs here or the Blue Hulk, depends on the build. So the whole reason to play this kind of deck is this artifact that doubles that comes into play or enter the battlefield triggers. Of course you go with Decoration. I'm not sure how many Planeswalkers you want in this deck. What's the good split? Some counter spells, that's for sure. This thing that's counter and bounce a permanent. So I'm gonna do a bunch of goofy stuff in here, especially Substantiate. Doubles up on functionality. Sideboards highlights probably some early interludes or some other blink effects. To do everything, gonna protect you guys. Yeah, counter spells, extra removal, extra planeswalker, something like that, so think beyond those lines. Okay guys, thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe, until the next sale, goodbye folks. So there will be more decks coming in the next episode.